Beinani, which we literally means the intermediate one. Usually when you say Beinani, it means half good and half bad. However, as the Alter Rebbe is going to explain, that's incorrect. The Beinani's performance is just like a tzaddik. He's 100% good. We're going to learn also the foundational teaching of every Yid having two neshamas. One, the nefesh bahamis, which is a animal-like tendency, being the vital soul. It's the animating the body. And then you have the Jewish soul, also has good characteristics. That's what we're going to learn in today's Tanya. Okay, we're holding now V'hod Amrinan. Alter Rebbe says V'hod Amrinan Ba'alma, and this that we say in general, the mechza al mechza mikri beinani, a person who has half good deeds, and half misdeeds, which are equally balanced, is called a beinani. V'roi v'zechuyo is mikri tzadik, while the one who has the majority of virtues, which outweighs the sin, that's called a tzaddik. So the Alter Rebbe says, Hushem hamushal. This is only a borrowed name. In other words, it's a figurative use of the term borrowed from when the Chachamim want to emphasize a particular point. So we use the names Beinani and a tzaddik, which denotes a balance between merits and sins. And in fact, but they're just a borrowed name. In other words, the Alter Rebbe says, L'inyan schar v'inish. With regards to reward and punishment, the fishin nidin acharube, because one is judged according to the majority of his deeds, umikri tzaddik b'dinei ma'achar shezeicha b'din, and he's called a righteous in reference to his verdict, since he was acquitted in his trial. In other words, when you have to deal with, let's say, legal sense, the term tzaddik applies to a person who performs more good deeds than evil. So he doesn't go to Gan Eden, he doesn't go to Ganem, he goes to Gan Eden. Beinani, that's half and half. Now the Alter Rebbe says, but however, if you want to know the truth, if however you want to know the true definition that distincts the qualities and ranks of tzaddikim and beinim, so the Alter Rebbe says, Chacham say, tzaddikim yetzetov sheftim. It says that righteous are judged, in other words, they're motivated and ruled solely by their good nature. Tzaddikim yetzetov sheftim are ruled by their good nature. Shneimar, as it says, v'libi cholol b'kirbi, and my heart is slain within me. In other words, she'ein la yetzer hara.
You're on the second page of the first.
Meaning, in the Tanya?
Yeah.
It's to turn over the page.
On my page right now.
Yes, on the top over there. She'ein la yetzer hara, meaning that David, who was the author of this pasuk, v'libi cholol b'kirbi, and my heart is slain within me, means that he had no yetzer hara. Why? You found it? Ki hargu b'tainis, because he killed the yetzer hara through fasting. So through fasting, David HaMelech was able to get rid of his yetzer hara. So the definition of a tzaddik in the true sense applies to a person who has no yetzer hara whatsoever. He has no evil nature at all. Now, however, a person who did not attain this degree, ridding himself of the yetzer hara, of the evil nature, even though his virtues outnumber his sins, he is not at the level and rank of a tzaddik. Now, not only has he not reached the rank of a tzaddik, he's not yet attained even the level of beinani. So again, a tzaddik means he got rid of his yetzer hara. Anybody who did not get rid of his yetzer hara is not deemed a tzaddik, not even a beinani. That's why the Chacham say in the Medrash that Hashem saw that the righteous were few. So he planted, in other words, he spread them in every generation. As it says, the tzaddik is the foundation of the world. So in every generation there must be a tzaddik who is the Yesod Elam. When we say tzaddikim, can be explained only if a tzaddik who has totally rid himself of the yetzer hara. With the term tzaddik to mean one whose good deeds overweigh the evil, so why do the Chacham say that the tzaddikim are few? when most Yidden have more good deeds than evil. Elamai, it must be that a tzaddik means somebody who has no ra whatsoever. Achbir Inyan, however, to explain this matter, so we can better understand the levels of a tzaddik and a beinoni, as well as the different virtues of ranks. So the Alter Rebbe says, this can be found what the Reb Chaim Vital says. Every Yid, whether it's tzaddik or rasha, Yishtei neshamis has two souls. As the pasuk says, "Uneshamis ani asisi," and neshamis souls which I have made. So, even though the pasuk speaks of an individual Yid, right, as it says ani asisi, but nevertheless, when he means neshamis lashon rabim, means plural terms is used. Why? Because every single Yid possesses two souls. Shehein shtei nefashos, which are two nefashos. So there's two nefashos. There are two souls that every Yid has. Two souls and life forces that every Yid has. Now, and the Alter Rebbe explains. Nefesh achas mitzad klipa. One soul originates in the klipa. V'sitra acha sitra acha. Now, what does klipa mean? Klipa means a shell or a peel. Hashem created forces which conceal godly life forces found in all creations, just like a peel covers a fruit. So that's what it means, klipa. Klipa is that shell that covers over godliness. Sitra achara, what does that mean? It means the other side, the side of creation that is the antithesis of holiness and purity. So one neshama comes from the level of klipa and sitra achara. This is the nefesh, which originates from klip and sitra achra, that enclosed in the body of a human being, given life to the body. As it's written, ki nefesh habasar badamhi, for the nefesh of the flesh, the nefesh that sustains physical and corporal life, is in the blood. Now, umimena boyis, you see on the bottom of there, umimena boyis kol midas rois. Now, from this nefesh, the nefesh habahamis, stems all evil characteristics. Ma'arba, you say this, deriving from the four elements within it. In other words, just as the four physical elements you have of fire, Eish, Ruach, Mayim, Afer. So you have fire, air, water, and earth, and they are the foundation of the physical entities. So too, in this nefesh, the nefesh is comprised of four corresponding spiritual elements. Now, since they derive from the klipa and ra, so they themselves are evil, and from then turn one's evil characteristics into being. So he says like this: from the nefesh habahamis comes all the midas rois, which come from the four evil elements. Dahainu, in other words, kas v'gaiva, a person who has anger and pride, they come from the element of fire, which rises upwards. So you have the nefesh habahamis. The nefesh habahamis has all the midas rois come from there. So when a person has anger and haughtiness, that comes from the level of fire. Now, with taivas hatanugim, let's say the appetite of pleasure, you say the mind that emanates from the element of water. Why? For water promotes the growth of all kinds of pleasurable things. Let's say to be frivol and to be joking, boasting, and idle talk, that emanates from the level of ear. To be like sloth and melancholy, that comes from Yisei the Ofer, from the element of earth. Earth characterizes, let's say, heaviness. So a person who has, let's say, sloth and melancholy, likewise senses heaviness in his limb. So when a person has a state of atzlus, and atzlus, you should know it comes from the offer of Ra. Now, every soul also has good character traits, which is inherited in every Jew, such as compassion and to be benevolent. So, now, since this is the nefesh klipa and evil, how do good characteristics come from there? So he says, "Ki b'Yisrael nefesh zu de klipa im klipas neka," because the case of the yid, in other words, the soul of a klipa, is derived from klipas neka, sheyesh ba gam kein tev, which also contains good, and the good within this nefesh gives rise to the positive natural traits, because even the nefesh abahamis, it comes from klipas neka. So in klipas neka, you also have some good over there. This klipa is from the level of Eitz Hadas, the tree of knowledge, which is comprised of good and evil. Now, however, the nations of the world, they emanate from the other unclean klippas, which contain no good whatsoever. Like the Eitz Chaim writes in Portal 49, chapter 3, that he writes over there that all the good that nations do is done out of selfish motives. Since their nefesh emanates from klippah, which contains no good, it follows that any good that a goy does is for selfish motives. As the Gemara comments on the pasuk, it says, "V'chesed le'umim chatos," the kindness of the nation is sin. So the Gemara says, "Shekol tzedakah v'chesed shumas eilam oisin," any charity and kindness done by the nations of the world, einan elo l'siyar, it's all for self-glorification. When a yid acts with chesed, he is motivated mainly out of concern for the welfare of a yid. Now, the proof of this is, where his fellow not need his help, this would give him greater pleasure than the gratification derived from his act of kindness. The nations of the world, the motivation is not the welfare of their fellow, rather it's for self-serving motive, the desire for self-glorification, a feeling of gratification. Now, it should be noted that amongst the nations of the world, there are also to be found those who are neshamas that derive from klippas nega. They're called chsidei umas ha'olam, and these righteous individuals are benevolent not out of selfish motives, but out of genuine concern for their fellow. So basically, the takeaway from today is we have two neshamas, and you have to know that whenever you have something that comes, a bad trait, where it comes from, and a good trait, where it comes from. Have a wonderful night and a wonderful day whenever you listen to